Good afternoon. I'm the Reverend Rodney Lemery, and welcome to the Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church and this celebration of life for Eunice Cole. Like so many people during and after the COVID lockdown, Eunice and her wife, Margaret, have been a part of our community, attending mostly virtual services for some time now. And as a result, my time with Eunice was fleeting, and I knew her only as a kind and loving presence, deep, already embraced deep by the arms of illness. In preparation for this celebration of life, though, I recognize the deep sorrow of not knowing fully this beloved grandmother, mother, wife, sibling, friend, and colleague. And isn't that the sting of death? Time lost, words not spoken, the touch of our loved one gone. The late Reverend Edward Cyril speaks about death and grief with these following words. When death comes to one who has suffered or endured a long and painful illness, our grief is softened by a sense of welcome and even blessed release. When it comes to one of many years, our grief is often a quiet sadness. And when it comes suddenly out of time, with little, if any, warning, our grief is sometimes sharp and shrieking. We all have different ways of expressing the grief associated with our loss today, but embracing and accepting these complex emotions is an important part of healing. There is such a loving group of people present with us today, both physically and virtually. All of you were part of Eunice's life journey, and she yours. I invite you just to take a moment and look around. Really bear witness to this amazing network of a loving family and friends that cross several generations and locations. As we will hear, Eunice was a thoughtful and fervent patient advocate in answering her life's call to be a nurse. In honor of Eunice, let's draw on a metaphor for our time together today from the field of nursing. Just as nurses skillfully assess and nurture patients back to health, today I would like to think that we can apply this compassion and care to one another. In this room, we will take on the mantles of caregivers to one another's pain and healing, layering our shared memories and emotions like a warm, comforting embrace. Our time together will allow us to create a soothing balm for our grief, mirroring the nurturing and healing spirit that Eunice embodied throughout her life. With this in mind, I invite you to call into your hearts this wonderful human, however you knew her, and hold to that image today as we hear from family and friends. Welcome to the celebration of life for Eunice Cole. May her memory be a blessing for all.
Rough Translations by Jan Richardson. Hope nonetheless, hope despite, hope regardless, hope still. Hope where we have ceased to hope, hope amid what threatens hope, hope with those who feed our hope, hope beyond what we had hoped, hope that draws us past our limits, hope that defies expectations, hope that questions what we have known, hope that makes a way where there is none. Hope that takes us past our fear, hope that calls us into life, hope that holds us beyond death, hope that blesses those to come.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Takahashi. I'm also one of the ministers in this congregation, and it is my great honor to be able to read to you an overview of Eunice's life put together by her family, and it is a great honor. As Rodney said, we regret that we didn't have more time with Eunice in our actual relationship, and we are grateful to learn more about her life and to look forward to our continuing relationship with Margaret. Eunice Ray Cole was born to her parents, Walter Hall and Ethel Graves Hall, on October 12, 1934, in Pocatello, Idaho. Her parents divorced when she was small, and Eunice lived with her mother, grandparents, and sister Ethel in Pocatello in her early years. Her mother married Clarence Preston, and the family moved to a farm in Linden, Washington, a small town near Bellingham in Putnam County in the late 1930s. Soon little brother Bill joined the family a few years later, and Eunice recalled the country life of her childhood with great fondness. The family had a large garden, cows and pigs and chickens. Eunice loved the ice cream that sometimes came in partial payment for the company that bought their milk. Eunice attended Linden schools and graduated from Linden High. And as a babysitter for a local doctor, she became interested in a career in nursing. After graduating from high school, she attended St. Joseph's School of Nursing in Bellingham, and then continued her studies by earning her bachelor's degree at the University of Washington in Seattle. Eunice married Herb Cole, and the family lived in Bellingham. Eunice's mother passed away at age 45, not long after her marriage to Herb. So as a young nurse, Eunice was grateful to care for her mother. Eunice had a long and distinguished nursing career. Early in her career, she was director of nursing services at St. Luke's Hospital in Bellingham. After leaving hospital nursing, she ran the family's new business venture, Star Surgical Supply. And at the same time, she was a leader in the Washington State Nurses Association and the American Nurses Association, serving as president of both. She ended her career as the director of nursing at long-term care and skilled nursing facilities in Bellingham, but continued to work for a decade as the ANA consultant to the National Student Nurses Association. In 1964, Mark Cole was born to Eunice and Herb. Eunice loved being Mark's mom through all the stages of their lives. Mark married Kelly in 1996 and settled in San Francisco, and Rebecca joined their family in 1998, and Jonathan in 2001. Rebecca now lives in Seattle and Jonathan in Denver. Eunice loved Mark even more when he brought Kelly, Rebecca, and Jonathan to the family. I suspect this is Mark's perspective on this. Eunice met Margaret Riley at work in Bellingham in 1993. They became great colleagues and then dear friends. And over the year, their relationship evolved. They began sharing a home in Arizona as a committed couple in 1997. They were married in 2008. Margaret's cousin, Deb Dolan Rigoni, shared these words. Eunice was a true trailblazer in both her professional and personal life. She was not afraid to take on tough jobs or make hard choices. Eunice loved her family, her work, her pets, and the outdoors. One might say she was full of life. I believe she would be warmed and moved by your presence here to celebrate and support those that she held dear. Deb goes on to say, I remember quite clearly a visit with Margaret in the early days of her relationship with Eunice. Margaret was so awed and impressed by who Eunice was as both a healthcare professional and a human being. It was lovely to see my cousin light up as she described Eunice and spoke of her many accomplishments. As a fellow member of the nursing profession, I was blown away by Eunice's credentials. More importantly, I was moved by the light in my cousin's eyes as she spoke of this amazing woman she had come to know and grown to love. Eunice and Margaret moved to the Bay Area in 1998 to be closer to Mark and his family. Margaret continued her work as a physical therapist while Eunice began to enjoy retirement and being a grandmother. She volunteered at the Clayton Public Library and John Muir Medical Center, and Eunice and Margaret traveled near and far and created beautiful homes and gardens. From 2012 to 2017, Eunice and Margaret lived in Seaside, Oregon, They returned to California in late 2017, settling in Rossmore, where they developed a wonderful community of neighbors and friends. Margaret continued to care for Eunice during her long illness, and we were grateful to welcome both of them into this community over the last couple years. Eunice passed away peacefully at home on September 15th, 2024. Mother, partner, grandmother, friend, colleague, sister, aunt, she will be sorely missed.
everyone. My name is Rebecca, and this is my brother Jonathan. We are Eunice's grandkids. And we have here a book of stories from my grandma that are answers to some questions that we asked her a few years ago about her life. And so we wanted to share some of these stories with you all to give a bit of a peek into her early life and her childhood.
First question, what brought you joy as a child? I loved to walk in the forest, which was part of our property. Mother Nature gave us beautiful evergreen trees which grew in small groves where farm animals would congregate. There were beautiful dogwood trees which had beautiful white blossoms every spring. At Christmas time, we walked through our forest to choose and cut the special tree which decorated our home for the season. During the spring and summer, we had a beautiful garden which produced food for our table. We played outside with our dog. Our baby brother Bill loved to join in outdoor activities, mostly running and tumbling around with a ball. I enjoyed reading the catalogs, especially the Christmas editions. Those were always my favorites.
How did you get your first job? After doing some babysitting for their family a few times, they asked me to be a live-in family member, my first real job. Both Dr. Rowe and his wife were active in our community. Mrs. Rowe was an RN who assisted Dr. Rowe in his office occasionally. I was in high school, so I attended classes during the week and helped with making dinner, and after dinner did cleanup. My first experience with a dishwasher. I also did ironing, etc. On the weekend, when Dr. and Mrs. Rowe went boating, I was in charge of the 3 children. Grandma lived with the Rowe family and spent most of her days in her apartment. Living in a household with healthcare providers made an impression on my life, and as a result made me want to become a nurse. My mother was very happy when I told her I wanted to enroll in the St. Joseph Hospital nursing program. An interesting, fun event happened at the Rowe home. I was watching a TV program one Sunday afternoon in their absence. It was a game show, and somehow I was able to call in and give my answer for a game, and wow, I won an electric kitchen stove. The Rowe family insisted that I accept the stove. My mother was moving to a home in Bellingham which didn't have a modern stove. The winning stove arrived in our new home where it was installed, a wonderful addition for us. My experience working for the Rowe family was an important beginning for a young woman who knew about working in the strawberry fields and other field work. Not only did the experience provide me with a new life, but also encouraged me to explore a career in nursing, which opened a world which I found very satisfying.
What is some of the best advice your mother ever gave you? Mom was very conscious of my height and the amount of teasing I experienced. I was called Beanpole by the boys, and when I stepped off the school bus, I was often crying when I reached the house. Mom listened as I would say, "Mom, can't I just be short for a day?" She would sit with me as I cried and then talked about how important it was for me to stand straight and tall. She reassured me that my height would be an asset as I grew older, and she was right. Mom stressed the importance of studies and how important it was to read and enjoy learning. Mom's advice was right. Good grades on my report cards were the door to a better education and career choices.
Where did you go on vacations as a child? We were not a traveling family, so didn't make long out of state where we lived on the Birch Bay Linden Road. As pre-teenagers, Mom made an effort every summer to rent a cabin at Birch Bay for a week. It was always exciting. Mom was the driver, and as we drove down the road, we began to sing our songs about Birch Bay. The first person who saw the water shouted, "There's the bay." As I remember, the small cabin was right next to the skating rink, which was busy all day and into the evening. Our main interest was being close to the saltwater. When the tide was out, we were there, running on the sand looking for treasures and drawing pictures with sticks we found on the beach. Brother Bill was a busy toddler who had to be watched closely. Most of our days were outside. Evenings in the cabin were spent eating whatever was available, playing various games, and listening to the radio. I always enjoyed scouting the sand for shells and rocks, agates a special winner. As I look back, the memories are wonderful. We always returned home with sand in our shoes and more freckles, along with some sunburn.
What is one of your favorite meals? I'm not a favorite of any meal. As a child, we frequently had chicken for dinner meals. Probably we raised chicken on our small family farm. Mom usually put the chicken in the oven and included her very good bread stuffing. We usually had fresh vegetables like corn on the cob during the summer season. I also enjoyed other fresh garden vegetables like potatoes, string beans, and tomatoes. We were very fortunate as a family to have homegrown fruit and vegetables. During the season, we not only ate fresh vegetables, our family worked together to prepare for winter by picking and preparing various vegetables for winter. Most were packed in glass jars, which were sealed and steamed. The sealed jars were stored in our basement storage room. We did not have a freezer, but rented a freezer in our local community where meat like chicken and beef were in storage. We had a good life in the food department.
What things are you proudest of in your life? I was proud to graduate from Linden High School, and my ability to keep my grade point above average became an important factor in college attendance and qualification for a scholarship. I attended Western Washington College pre-nursing program and met the qualifications to enter the nursing program at St. Joseph Hospital School of Nursing. I graduated from the nursing program and was offered a job immediately. Later in my career, I attended University of Washington and received my baccalaureate degree in nursing. One more of the proudest things in my life was my beautiful baby. I only had one child, but Mark, my son, was and is the very best.
Hello, my name is Kathleen. I'm Margaret's sister, and here with my family. I'm just gonna take a breath. When I close my eyes and I picture my sister-in-law Eunice, I see her bright white hair and her long neck bent forward in concentration. I see her strong wrists and her long, nimble fingers set upon a task, always busy, always at work. We heard that she had had a distinguished nursing career, spanning over 4 decades, but really we had no clue what an icon she was. By the time my family became acquainted with Eunice very well, she was already on the cusp of retirement. To us, and especially to our children, she was simply our beloved Auntie Eunice. Auntie Eunice loved to work with her hands. In her retirement especially, she channeled much of that passion into creative endeavors and gifts of service. She was quiet and understated in these projects, but Making others feel special and cared for clearly brought her tremendous satisfaction. She was an elf with a big, wide workshop in those long, strong hands. Nothing lit up her eyes more than watching someone delight in her handiwork, whether it was bed socks or butter cookies, a beautiful blanket, or a wild blackberry pie. You just wore your 6th pair of homemade bed socks to shreds? A new pair in a bigger size was already in progress. Did you really eat that entire Tupperware bin of shortbread? Oh, look, another batch just came out of the oven. You want to learn how to make some of those things for yourself? Auntie Eunice will gladly teach you how. The biggest challenge would be the family debate about which treat was the best. The butter cookies? The ginger snaps? The lemon bars? The bourbon balls? Or the gluten-free chocolate cherry drops? Eunice and Margaret's carefully crafted Christmas packages would come with notes and tags in Eunice's perfect penmanship, helping our children hone their ability to read cursive with ease. Eunice was born into what is often referred to as the silent generation. Well, in our experience, she was anything but. Auntie Eunice exhorted us to pay attention, to read, to exercise healthy skepticism, to appreciate our freedoms and our privileges, to take care of one another, and to actively participate in civic engagement. She was the most patriotic and passionate American citizen I have ever met. I finally became familiar with Eunice's nursing persona after knowing her for nearly 15 years. In 2008, in the final days of my own mother's life, Eunice made it possible for my sister, Margaret, and me to provide Mom with 24/7 in-home hospice care with virtually no outside intervention. It was a profound gift just to be with our mother as she was dying, to hold her hand, sing to her, recount family stories, or just sit with her in peaceful silence. Eunice created a calm and healing atmosphere for all of us. Her confidence and her competence were tremendously reassuring. Nurse Eunice knew just what to do and when to do it. She spoke to our mother directly with respect and compassion. She helped us tend to Mom's last physical needs in a manner that preserved her dignity until her last breath. In those precious, really sacred final days with our mother, I also gained perspective on the bond between Margaret and Eunice. I saw how in sync they were as a couple and as a caregiving team. And I got a glimpse into what their early years working together at Mount Baker Care Center must have been like. How fortunate all those patients and their families were to experience such devotion to their care. So, thank you, beloved auntie, dear sister-in-law, nursing hero, Eunice, for the ginger snaps, the Meyer lemon preserves, the handmade socks and bags and scarves and blankets and hats, and for your sage advice, honest opinions, and sometimes stern counsel. For all those inspiring and edifying books that you passed along. For your imaginative playtimes with our daughters when they were little, consulting on the care and feeding of their stuffed animals and doll children. Eunice, Today, we remember and bless your strong hands and your generous heart. We celebrate your creativity, your courage, and your inexhaustible sense of purpose. We will forever be grateful for your long, brave life.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Riley. I'm Margaret's brother, and Kathleen's as well. And to Margaret, Mark, Kelly, Jonathan, Rebecca, family and friends, so sorry for your loss. Eunice was a good person who cared about others and always made you feel comfortable in her presence. We were privileged to consider Eunice part of our family. Eunice and I had a special relationship, I believe, in connection with our vocations. I was in the law enforcement profession for many years and recall occasions when I benefited, many occasions when I benefited from the support of a nurse. They were always there, in good times and in bad, to care, support, provide a friendly greeting, or maybe even a home-baked cookie from the nurse's station. I wasn't familiar with the Nightingale tribute until Margaret mentioned it would be included in the celebration today. I didn't know that Florence Nightingale, a nurse herself, was also the Lady of the Light. During the Crimean War in the 1850s, Florence walked the halls of a military hospital at night, carrying a light, an oil lamp, I should say, looking over and caring for sick and injured soldiers that were there. As many of you know, her forward-thinking approach, that is Florence Nightingale, to nursing eventually advanced patient care to another level, and her legacy lives on today. The Lady with the Light made me think of Eunice. I believe Eunice was a lady with her own light, a light that brightened a room when she entered with her positive, thoughtful, and caring manner. Eunice's caring light was also evident in the way she supported Margaret and Kathleen in caring for our mother until she passed away here in Walnut Creek in 2008. May God bless Eunice for the person that she was. May the warmth and glow of her light in the form of wonderful memories, to include her legacy as a mom, a spouse, and a true professional, continue to shine over all who knew and loved Eunice today and in the days ahead. Thank you.
beautiful ceremony. I had no idea Eunice was crafty. I knew her at the meetings that I attended as a nurse, and we crossed paths because of her incredible contributions to nursing in Washington and nationally. So thank you for including us in the comments from one of the ANA past presidents, myself, to share the remarks and some memories on the passing of Eunice Cole, the 27th president of the American Nurses Association. Thank you, Mark and Margaret, for including me. I'm honored to bring remarks on behalf of ANA's 38th president, Jennifer Menza Kennedy, who is traveling internationally this week. She sends her regrets because she's not able to be here, and certainly her condolences. I'm also here on behalf of the 10 past presidents who worked with and respected Eunice as a nurse leader and as a very special person. My role is to add a little bit of nursing history, though you've done a really wonderful job just really encapsulating more of the story of Eunice Cole. And she made history, and in the recognition of her many contributions, she started her work in Washington State, as you've heard. Judy Huntington, who was in a couple of those photos over there, a dear colleague. I hope you're watching, Judy. I bet you are. And she did a wonderful remembrance of Eunice that was published by the Washington State Nurses Association. And Judy has a Facebook page. She's pretty active. And she shared many of the comments that had been received on that page, and they were just lovely. And so I'll start with a little bit of that work in Washington State and then move to the national level. She received her diploma, as you heard. That was a hospital school of nursing. You were an indentured servant in a hospital setting, and you learned how to be a nurse, and you worked really, really hard at it. You didn't get a degree. So you heard that Eunice then decided to go and get a bachelor's degree in nursing at Washington State. And that was one of the many things that Eunice worked on to try to smooth the educational pathway for nurses in this country. And that is a major contribution that she made. So to her kudos, she made a difference there, and she experienced it herself. She then worked as a staff nurse and clinical instructor until 1965, and then she became Director of Nursing Services at St. Luke's General Hospital in Bellingham, Washington, a position she held until 1976. She was also an early nurse entrepreneur, a rare breed, opening her own nurse-owned surgical supply and home care center in Bellingham, and worked as well in long-term care, becoming Director of Nursing at Mount Baker Care Center. She was active in the Bellingham community in Whatcom County, and she also was an advisor to the Western Washington University nursing program and the Bellingham Practical Nursing Program for over 25 years. In 1972, she became president of the Washington State Nurses Association, and they are still, to this day, a thriving national state nurses association, part of the American Nurses Association. She was facing the reality of nurses who wished to bargain collectively for the wages, the benefits, and working conditions of being a nurse. And she, despite great pressure from other nurse administrators and her own employer, supported the wishes of the nurses and endorsed their activities in the form of collective bargaining. That was a risk, really, to her own job, but also a statement publicly that nurses can and should advocate for their rights and for the working conditions. So she calmly stood her ground and advocated for nurse involvement. She was recognized for that role and that ability to be outspoken, calm, and very persuasive in her knowledge-based delivery. And she provided a role model for other managers and administrators, continuing her active role in WSNA and eventually receiving an ANA Honorary Recognition Award in large part for her work at WSNA. She was elected then to a 4-year term in the American Nurses Association Board of Directors. She was chair of the first ANA Political Action Committee, so she stood up for collective bargaining rights. She also stood up for nurses' rights to be politically involved and to use our voice. She was president in 1982 and served 2 terms, total of 4 years. She implemented many projects, and she really had an enduring impact on ANA. I've been reading about her work at the state and ANA, and it's really like viewing a newsreel of what was going on in terms of issues in this country, in nursing, and really globally. She worked to adjust to the changes that were occurring in Medicare, a fairly recently passed rule, and it provided a lot of funding, but it also had a lot of restrictions on hospital-based care. She was helping to maneuver that. She worked with other leaders as well on nursing staff shortages, which seemed to come and go with regularity, so she had one of those in her era, to improve nursing education and to advocate for recognition of nursing research. And now there's a National Institute of Nursing Research at the federal level. During her tenure, ANA was a host country to the International Council of Nurses, and she worked very hard to support other countries as they became involved and expanded their activity in the international nursing community, specifically China, and you saw some wonderful photos from her work in China, and South Korea, who became eventually a host to ICN, and that's a big responsibility. Following her ANA presidency, Eunice served 10 years as a trustee of the American Nurses Foundation, and very importantly, as advisor to the National Student Nurses Association. Diane Mancino was the long-serving executive director of NSA, and she wrote in her remembrances, "As a consultant, Eunice attended all NSNA's board meetings and annual conventions. Her role was to inform and guide the board and the members at the House of Delegates about ANA's policies and statements. Through her grace and wisdom, using her soft yet knowing voice, Eunice would know just what to say and when to speak. She would often question the board. Have you considered the unintended consequences of this decision? Sometimes she would ask the president to provide a reference to support evidence to justify a decision. While she did not directly influence the decision, she guided the board's thinking, and I certainly observed her do that with ANA. Those of us who are privileged to know her and serve with her are forever changed for the better for that experience, and we are truly grateful to be among them. Not only have we lost a treasured colleague, the world has lost a true advocate for nurses and healthcare. Words are at best inadequate to truly represent the breadth and scope of Eunice Cole's many, many contributions. Yet we do want to share this Nightingale tribute in her honor. And the title of the poem is She Was There. When a calming, quiet presence was all that was needed, she was there. In the excitement and miracle of birth, or in the mystery and loss of life, she was there. With a silent glance that could uplift a patient, family, student, or friend, she was there. At those times when the unexplainable needed to be explained, she was there. When the situation demanded an uplifting smile, a bright mind, or occasionally a sharp tongue, she was there. When a gentle touch, a firm push, or an encouraging, calming word was needed, she was there. In the battle for human rights, healthcare reform, and the advancement of nurses and nursing, she was there. To witness humanity, its beauty, in good times and bad, without judgment, she was there. To embrace the woes of the world, willingly and offer hope, she was there. And now that it is time for her to be at the greater one's side, she is there. We honor Eunice Cole this day with a white rose to symbolize our honor and appreciation for being our colleague. And we light a single white candle that her great strength and spirit may shine in our memories forever. Thank you for the privilege to be part of this celebration of a life lived well.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here to celebrate my mom. Mom was born in Pocatello, Idaho, but her mom moved to Whatcom County, Washington before she started school. Her family lived outside of Linden, a farm town in the northwest corner of the state. She went far in the world, but her country upbringing was always with her. She loved gardening and the outdoors. In the summer, there were always begonias in our yard and fuchsias hanging from our eaves. She tended our roses and rhododendrons with great care. She loved to pick blackberries, not the big seedy Himalayas that come in August, but the small, hard-to-find ones that come out in late June or early July. She made jam and the best pies. We had a metal box where the cookies were kept. I remember it always being full, chocolate chip with nuts. She knitted and sewed. She ironed, often on Sunday nights while we watched Wild Kingdom and the Wonderful World of Disney. I imagine she was easing her way into the work week, making sure the pillowcases were smooth, handkerchiefs would fit neatly in pockets, and her nurse's uniform was pressed. Mom could be no nonsense. She was quick to engage in political discussions and was excited about the prospect of a woman president. She'd want me to say here that you should be too. When she disapproved of something, she was curt and dismissive and had this way of pursing her lips. When something was mildly funny or silly, she would make a kind of hissing noise through her teeth. And when something tickled her, she had a big, infectious laugh. She loved watching football, especially our Washington Huskies, and was an obnoxious fan, yelling and cheering at the TV. She had a quick step in her working years. There was a lot to get done. My memory of her time in leadership at St. Luke's Hospital is one of her striding through the house in the morning in full uniform, white dress, never pants, white stockings and shoes. She was a commanding presence even before she put on her nursing cap, adding a few more inches to her 6-foot frame. She drove an Oldsmobile 98 that she called Jezebel. Jezebel was large and comfortable in the way of 70s-era American cars, and she was a vehicle for a woman in charge. When I was in 6th grade, my parents bought Star Surgical Supply, a medical supply business in Bellingham. Mom ran the business. Dad supported behind the scenes with business insight, repairs, and equipment delivery. I watched and worked and learned under Mom's supervision. I stocked shelves, washed, returned rental equipment, helped with deliveries, counted inventory. Eventually, I helped customers and ran the cash register. We owned the store until I was in college, and looking back, it was an incredible opportunity for me as a teen and young adult to work beside my mom in her professional capacity. I don't remember a lot of instruction and training, but watching my mom model care for our customers, business savvy, and hard work was formative for me. I also recall that working together at the store was when our family worked best. We were a team, colleagues with a shared mission, our challenges set aside. My mom left hospital nursing, but not the nursing profession. From the early days of her career, she was involved at the local, state, and national level of the American Nurses Association. She was an advocate for patients, consumers, for nurse leadership and nurses' compensation, and for strengthening the nursing profession. She was a maker of good trouble, as Congressman Lewis called it, and I had a front row seat. Other kids went to summer camp. I went to ANA conventions. My first convention was in 1974 in San Francisco, and I think I went to every biennial convention for the next decade: Honolulu, Orlando, Washington, D.C., Anaheim. In those days, the convention gathered thousands of nurses from across the country. They charted the course of the organization and the profession and elected leaders. Leadership elections involve full-blown campaigns, and I was in the thick of it, passing out stickers and flyers and wearing a t-shirt that said, "Vote for Eunice Cole" on the front and "She's my mom" on the back. I learned about politics and strategy and colleagueship and how leaders need to have thick skin because not everyone will agree with them, and that people, even nurses, can be mean. I watched her run meetings with thousands of participants, pushing through controversy, counting votes, listening to opinions, navigating parliamentary procedure. When we were in Washington, D.C. for a convention, the period for the state's ratifications of the Equal Rights Amendment was ending. And throughout the convention, nurses signed a paper scroll adding their support to a letter that they planned to deliver to Phyllis Schlafly at a party she was hosting to celebrate the demise of the ERA. As the chair of ANA's Political Action Committee and its president-elect, Mom was chosen to deliver the letter. I remember her announcing to the crowd of nurses, "I'm going now to deliver the letter to Phyllis Schlafly," and marching out of the hall to incredible cheers. I joined her on the way out, and we went with the ANA staff to the Shoreham Hotel, where she tried to crash Phyllis's party. She didn't make it past the security, but I think about it now, she was such a badass. In 1986, she was invited by President Reagan to a state dinner for the Emir of Bahrain. My dad would have rather died than attend a black tie dinner at the White House, so I was her escort. Everything was fine until I learned that I was not seated with my mom. She was across the room, and I was left to navigate a place setting that was 5 forks deep with my dinner partner, a congressman's wife, who told me she'd been waiting half of my 22-year-old life to be invited to the White House. In addition to President and Mrs. Reagan, that night we met space shuttle astronauts, including Sally Ride, Senator Henry Jackson from Washington, and Moses Malone of the Philadelphia 76ers. At that time, Moses was at the peak of his career and enormously famous. Not knowing who he was, my mom decided we should meet him because he was tall, she said. Mom assumed that her extraordinary height gave her affinity with anyone who was tall. Even when he said his name, Mom had no idea who he was and mortified me by asking, "Now, do you have a position in government?" In her 4 years as ANA president, she traveled the world, went to every state, testified before Congress, talked with Bryant Gumbel on the Today Show, and engaged with nurses from everywhere. And then she went home and entered her encore career as Director of Nursing and Skilled Nursing Care Facilities. It seems she wasn't quite done and wanted to try a new thing. Amid her professional success, I didn't appreciate the full significance of the ride I was on. Mom told me over and over in those years, "It'll be a good experience for you." I understand now that she was right. As a girl in Linden, or even as a young nurse, I don't think my mom would have imagined the prominence she had in the nursing world and beyond. My sense is that she just kept stepping forward where it seemed her leadership was needed. I'm guessing that she didn't feel particularly prepared for each new thing, but she was faithful to a profession and to professionals she loved. She got to hear kudos while she was alive and able to receive them, but it has been amazing for me to hear what her life meant to nurses who have shared on social media and with me directly over the past few weeks. The work she and her colleagues did not only had impact in their day, but also for succeeding generations of nurses. In the last decades of her life, she was a loving spouse to Margaret, a traveler, a volunteer, a gardener, and proud grandmother to Rebecca and Jonathan. She baked cookies and birthday cakes, attended performances and sporting events, knitted sweaters and beanies and blankets. Our Christmas tree is full of the ornaments she gave us each year. Mom and Margaret hosted pool parties that were a welcome retreat from our foggy San Francisco life. She baked with the kids, gardened with them, and offered occasional age-appropriate political indoctrination. For all her leadership chops, she had a silly streak a mile wide it came out with Rebecca and Jonathan in a lovely way. Ever the nurse, she was always concerned about our kids' health and their ailments. I remember one time when she, against all good sense, came to our house to offer a hand when rotavirus came to call. And Kelly and I were unable to care for our little ones who were just fine, way quicker than we were. Over the past few years, Mom's world got smaller and smaller. There were fewer things she wanted to talk about, and she was less aware of time and details. But every time I saw her, she asked about Rebecca and Jonathan and Kelly. She loved you all so much. But she loved me the most. Her face would light up when she saw me, and sometimes she would throw her arms up in the air with joy. I'll miss that. We had a favorite park where we'd go during my visits. When she was feeling up to it, we'd take a walk and sit on a bench. She loved the birds and the trees and the kids, always the kids. I find sometimes that I don't have many things to say, but I've come to trust that being together in silence is enough. We did that more and more. It was enough to be together. The peacefulness was a gift to me, and I hope a gift to her. On her last day alive, I held her hand for hours and listened to her breathing. It was like waves on the beach, so calm. Our relationship was wonderful and also had its complexity. We didn't always get things right with each other, but there was deep love, deep respect, deep care, and in the end, deep peace. Her passing leaves a gap in my life, but she created a remarkable legacy of love and action that has formed me and continues to inspire me.
Oh my. Thank you all for gathering today to celebrate the life of my beloved wife, Eunice. We shared many rich and meaningful years, for which I will always be grateful. I'm going to need your help today. I've never done this before. Phew. In a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to sing a song with me, but first I'd like to share a few memories from my first year knowing Eunice. I met Eunice on February 1st, 1993. I had heard of Eunice Cole. She was very well respected in Bellingham, Washington for her nursing leadership. This day would be the first day we would meet and begin to work together at Mount Baker Care Center. Eunice would be the new director of nursing, and I the first on-staff physical therapist. It was a dark, rainy, and very windy morning in the Pacific Northwest. I had hung up my drippy raincoat and was chatting with the administrator and some staff members. After a bit, we began to wonder, where is Eunice? This was back in the old days, before we had cell phones. More time passed, and then all of a sudden, a very tall woman came through the doorway. She was like a vision in her ankle-length, shimmery, electric blue raincoat. Her beautiful smile and laughter immediately brightened the room and lifted everyone's spirits. Eunice Cole had arrived. Eunice told us that the stormy weather and rough waters had delayed the small car ferry that she used to commute to and from her home on Lummi Island. Once the ferry was able to make a safe crossing to Gooseberry Point, she still had another 20 miles to travel on mostly unlit country roads. But now she was here and on duty, and it was time to get to work. We then began our professional life together. What I can share with you is that from the moment I met Eunice, I knew she would play an important role in my life. But little did I know how significant her role would be. During my first months of working with Eunice, I developed great respect for her and deep appreciation for her depth of knowledge and experience. By the end of our first year, we had become great colleagues, and I had learned several key things about Eunice. First was her dedication to the nursing profession and to providing the best possible patient care. She had all the responsibilities of being the director of nursing, but she also provided hands-on direct care herself. Eunice was always ready to assist any patient, family member, or staff person. She set the tone and guided the staff by her own good example. I had the privilege of caring for some of our patients side by side with Eunice when they were in their most fragile and vulnerable stages of life. She told me how much she loved providing direct patient care better than anything. She would often work in her office well into the evening on her administrative duties. Her desk was always piled with work projects. Eunice would laugh and say, "I should be concerned only if her desk was clean and tidy." She would sometimes work 6 days a week and often on holidays. She would regularly meet with every nurse and nursing assistant on every shift. Eunice would periodically directly observe how patient care was being conducted around the clock. She had a clear paperweight on her desk inscribed with these words: "There is no limit to what can be done if it doesn't matter who gets the credit." The second thing I learned was of Eunice's love for and pride in her son, Mark. Her eyes would light up and she would smile every time she spoke of him. This never, ever changed. And she did love you the best. The third thing was that despite our 20-year age difference, Eunice had so much vitality and such long legs that I usually had to run to keep up with her. The fourth thing I learned was that even though she worked more hours and days than anyone else, she always found time to do things like bake hundreds of delicious Christmas cookies for her family members and all of the staff on every shift. She herself ate very few cookies then. The fifth thing I learned that first year was of Eunice's love for and faith in the potential of the United States of America. She was such an advocate for valuing and protecting our democracy. She encouraged others to actively participate and always exercise their privilege to vote. As time passed, Eunice and I became close friends and learned we both loved walking on the beach and hunting for agates. We loved the beauty in nature, fresh air, gardening. We loved our pets and quietly watching the sunset. We truly enjoyed being together no matter what we were doing. More time passed and our relationship continued to evolve. We became life partners and then were married. We moved to California in 1998 to be closer to Mark and his wife, Kelly. Eunice was able to enjoy her next chapter, maybe I think her favorite, being Grandma Eunice to Rebecca and Jonathan. Eunice and I enjoyed so many wonderful times, and I will always treasure those memories. We both also experienced heartache and challenges, but our faith in a higher power and our love for each other were our guiding lights. We began attending some concerts and services here in this church in the early 2000s. Fast forward now to 2024, and we began attending Sunday services here at Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church as often as possible. Eunice was having more health challenges and difficulty with her mobility and memory. But she would always perk up here. Reverend Leslie and Reverend Rodney support a safe haven here. Eunice loved the welcoming atmosphere and the friendly congregation. She loved seeing the children. She would smile and laugh. She loved the music and would tap her toes and clap her hands and sing. She was always, always joyful in this sanctuary. So, this finally brings me back to the song we are going to sing together. Before I became a physical therapist, I had been a guitar instructor at the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago. One of the special things about a folk song is how it can tell a great story and paint vivid pictures with just a few words. Several days before Eunice took her final breath, she was sitting on our couch at home. She was very weak, but was enjoying the beauty of the trees and the sky that she could see through our windows. Eunice was petting our little dog, Lily, who was snuggled up next to her right leg. I picked up a guitar and started playing a few songs. Eunice tapped her left hand on her thigh and smiled. When I started singing, "This Land Is Your Land," she began to softly and sweetly sing along with me. She had always loved this song. This turned out to be the last day that Eunice could sing or even speak coherently. So Eunice is here with us right now in spirit, and she doesn't want us to be sad. She is smiling her amazing smile, and she wants us to be happy that we can be here together to sing "This Land Is Your Land." So, I've got to pick up this guitar and see if something comes out. Let's see. Can you hear it all right? All right. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. I roamed and rambled, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts. And all around me a voice was singing. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I went walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me those golden valleys. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As the sun came shining and I was strolling, and the wheat fields waving and the dust clouds rolling, as the fog was lifting, a voice was saying, this land was made for you and me. Okay, come on. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island. From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me. This land was made for you and me. And as Eunice would say, as she would wave this little flag that she had on her desk for many years, don't forget to vote.
You can stay standing if you'd like, in body or in spirit. A human life is sacred. It is sacred in being born, it is in its living, and in its dying. And as we end our time today, the family invites you to join them for a reception on the brick patio outside the sanctuary in nature, where we have learned that Eunice would love us to probably eat and drink. So as we depart, I would be amiss not to share these words that Mark gave me from Florence Nightingale. It seems a common idea among men, and even among women themselves, that it requires nothing but a disappointment in love or an incapacity for other things to turn a woman into a good nurse. No man, not even a doctor, ever gives any other definition of what a nurse should be than this: devoted and obedient. This definition would do just well for a porter. It might even do for a horse. It will not do for a nurse.